1, and we're live. You're tuning into Cosmic Children. I'm your host, Kevin, and today I have a very interesting individual in the studio with me. Randall, could you please introduce yourself to the listeners and what you do?
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me. So I'm the founder of this organization called Books Beyond Borders. It's a social enterprise. Very simple idea. We collect books, we sell books, and we raise money for schools in Nepal. And that's basically what I've been doing for the last 3 years, is selling books.
I think you've kind of perfected the elevator pitch right there.
Yes.
So, okay. It's very interesting you brought out the term social enterprise. Yeah. I think I was researching for this particular podcast, and on your blog, you said the difference between charity and social enterprise.
Yeah.
And before we delve into what Books Beyond Borders, I just want you, since you touched on it, could you elaborate what's the difference between charity and social enterprise? Because I think in most people's heads, the idea of both of them is kind of interchangeable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I think there's a lot of different terminology for, but for mine, what I believe is I think most charities, most of their revenue comes from charitable donations. So they raise money by running fundraising campaigns. For social enterprise, you can be a for-profit social enterprise. You can also be a non-profit social enterprise. So your main source of revenue comes from providing a service or selling something for profit, and using a majority of the profit to do social good. But for charities, they their main sole goal is not to make money. It's just to raise as much donations as they can to fund their projects. So there's no right or wrong, good or bad. It's just that over the years I've learned that it's much more sustainable and probably easier to scale if you run it as a social enterprise model rather than a charity model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just going off what you said, the charity model of doing things, that you are essentially raising money to do a project, and if the money runs out, you have to raise money again.
Exactly.
And that in itself, if we see it like a quote unquote like a business and how it should be run, it's not sustainable, because you always have to get money in,
correct,
do a project and get money in again.
Yeah, it's very donor reliant, right? So in times like these where people are losing jobs and the wallet, you're less willing to open up their wallet.
Troubling times.
Exactly. You see a lot of people are just not donating as much as before the pandemic. So a lot of charities have shut because of these. And I think these times also kind of forces us to rethink our business model and find a way that how can you scale your company that's doing social good. Yeah.
Was it a recent change to state that Books Beyond Borders is a social enterprise, or has it always been at the core of it?
No. So funny thing, when I first started the company in end of 2017, actually start of 2018, we ran it like a charity.
Yep.
Yeah, we raised money. I gave out my birthdays. I sold cookies. I called my friends and families. I basically tap out my whole friends and family list, to ask for donations. And I think the first year it was great. You get a lot of support. Your friends support you. Your family thinks you're doing something noble. And second year, you start to realize people stop picking up your call. And the third year is okay, you have not much friends and families left. So
so it's a lonely road.
It's a lonely road. Yeah. So it's for me, and you gotta have really thick skin to be fundraising all the time. And unfortunately for me, I don't enjoy that as much. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So could you speak to the early days of Books Beyond Borders? You talked about cooking or baking cookies to sell.
Cookies, yeah.
So this is an effort to fundraise.
To raise money, correct. At the very early stage, I did everything I can to raise money. I was very new to this space. Baking cookies was one of them. One thing I did every year was to create a video, put myself on video, and create a fundraising page, and just relentlessly go out and seek for donations. Yep. And then, I called my friends to give up their birthdays as well. So, kind of made use of my friends. And yeah, so, I think the first 2 years of Books Beyond Borders was solely just fundraising. And we had this policy where we don't use any donations to fund overhead. So if you were to donate $10, 100% of that $10 goes directly to the school that we're supporting. So we can raise like $10,000, but I'd not taken a salary, you know, or I remember didn't have enough money to build a website. So we could have raised a lot of money, but we couldn't scale. There was no business model. It was just asking for handouts. And you know, it was a very unsustainable business model from the very beginning.
So it got to a point where you realized that if this Books Beyond Borders is to sustain itself or to even have a longer future, you have to change it somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I won't count myself as, you know, if I'm still in my 18, 19, 20 years old, I could still do this for another 2-3 years, but I got to think about my future, you know, like I got family, and I got I got to kind of think about what's my life look like after 3-4 years. And to be honest, I have to look at it as a career rather than like a volunteering stint, or just trying to, I got sick of my life trying to go out and change the world for 1-2 years and go back to my job. So ever since I have that switch that I need to look at it as a career, then you know, that's when I decided to look at it as a social enterprise model. That's when everything kind of like changed.
So was it something you saw, or was it something someone told you, or did you consult a mentor as to illuminate you to that particular decision to make the switch? Or was it just you contemplating, perhaps how long am I going to do this?
The first thing that I knew was that I needed to get a salary. Otherwise, no one would ever take me seriously. I could have raised a lot of money, but if I'm not able to pay myself a salary, then you know, it just didn't make sense. I also didn't want to go back on my initial promise of using 100% of the donations we raised to fund the project. So even until today, if anyone were to give us $10, we would send 100% of the $10 to the field. We would not touch it. So I needed a way to earn an additional like side revenue that is not dependent on, it is not actually a donation. So that's when, you know, I started selling books, because now I'm not asking people for money, I'm asking them for books. And I think in Singapore, if one thing I learned is that people are very generous with their books. Maybe not so much, you know, giving the money, but when you ask for books, people have tons of them. So what we did was just kind of like rescue these very high quality books and then resell them for a profit. And what we do now with the profit is we pay our overheads, and then we use our net profit to fund the project. So it's much lesser. We could have raised much more money asking for donations, but right now at least we can have money to invest in like paying a rent, growing the team, and invest in marketing, trying to like grow the brand. So it's much better right now.
So right now it functions more like a regular business with a proper runway, and you have proper budgets for different things.
Exactly.
And,
we operate just like any other for-profit company. We compete with just like any other for-profit company. The only difference is where we put the extra money that we earn.
So I do have a question. So why the interest to even do something like this? Because it is admittedly to me very unconventional. To want to do something which I feel it is pretty noble. Like, because you are putting yourself out there to serve and to help people in a different country. Of a different poverty level. So why?
Well, I think then we really gotta go back to how it all started, right? So maybe I just bring you way back into the journey. I've never volunteered in my life before. I've never made a donation. I'm like kind of like the far end opposite of what you think I would be doing right now. So back then I would, my main goal in life was to become the next Mark Zuckerberg, to run my next company, sell it, and then, you know, I was very interested in startups, business. I knew at the very early stage of my life, I want to be an entrepreneur. There was one thing I was very sure about. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew very clearly that I didn't want to work for anyone else. And I guess I spent my last 5 years working in different tech and startup companies, and then eventually got a burnout. So I wrote actually on my founding story about this personal mantra that I have of doing one thing that scares me every year.
Every year, okay.
Every year. So that year in 2017, I took that challenge and spent 2 weeks walking the Himalayas to Mount Everest base camp alone. And my goal was to try to find like meaning and purpose in life. That was just my goal. I wanted to get away from everyone.
Were you in your early 20s?
Yes, I was. I think I was like 25. You know, quarter life crisis.
Quarter life crisis.
Yeah, you know, just nice. Quarter life crisis.
So did you meet a budding bush over there, or what's up?
So the initial goal was to just spend 2 weeks alone in somewhere where nobody can like reach to me. Like I cannot get any phone signal, emails, whatsoever.
So you're off the grid.
Off the grid. And man, that's the hardest thing I ever done in my life. I swear to God, if anyone has been to Everest Base Camp alone, it's not fun.
Is it beyond physical taxation?
Oh, for sure, man. It's like you walk 10 hours a day, and I went alone, so I didn't have a guide, nothing, and it was just very lonely. And because I was carrying like 15 kg.
Oh man. Okay.
And it's like road march, you know.
Yeah.
Like
that is what I was thinking.
Yeah. And then of course at a high altitude you have very little oxygen and stuff. But I think on one of the days, day 6 or 7, I met this porter who was walking in the same direction as me.
Who?
Yeah, his name is Madan. He's a young like porter where they carry goods from one village to another village. Yeah. And he was following me, and I swear to God, during that point I was so I don't know if it's the altitude that got to me, but I was so paranoid that he wanted to kidnap me for my organ, because I read news.
You hear stories like this.
And like we're in a place where there's just like bulls, like yaks walking around. It felt so much like, Game of Thrones, and anything can happen.
Okay.
And then eventually I went to talk to him and found out that he was worried that I went to the wrong place. And we just became good friends. We would walk the entire day. We wouldn't really talk much. He couldn't really understand English, but I remembered asking him like, why is he doing this? Is he tired? Carrying for so many hours? And he started laughing, and he said like, I used to walk 3 to 4 hours just to get to school, but now I have to work. And that was the first time I started to think like, where do kids go to school? Like, where do kids like Madan, why is he not in school? And like, I don't even see bicycles around here. I have absolutely no idea how does a school look like. And I think something clicked in me that day. For some reason, like my head wasn't so much about like, oh, my life sucks. I like, the self-pity and all that kind of stuff, but more about like, I was more concerned about the person in front of me and something that is not me. And it was just one feeling that I've never felt for a long time, because I guess for the last 1-2 years, I was having that whole self-pity game, like, oh, my life sucks, this sucks, screw the world and everyone's better than me and stuff. And I don't know, for some reason, I just felt like it's not about me now, it's about them. And I just went on this hunt to find a school I wanted to get more into it. Honestly, I have absolutely no idea what I was doing. I went back to the local city and just asked the locals if they could invite me to visit a school. And so I spent 1 month in Nepal. And then when I got back to Singapore, a local actually got back to me on Facebook. He's like, I can bring you to visit a school. I flew that next weekend back to Nepal.
Shit.
Yeah. So I came back for 5 days after 1 month of backpacking, and he replied me. I just booked a next ticket. I flew back there. And I just hopped on this random guy car. We drove to like 12 hours into a village. And that was the first time I visited a rural school that was at the epicenter of the 2015 earthquake. And when I got there, I saw kids would walk hours empty-handed to face like a classroom with blank walls, untrained teachers, and just have nothing to read. It's like a metal container, and I had pictures of that on some of my social media. It's just devastating. And I remember at that point of time, I took out a pen and paper and I wrote like I could make 2 decisions. One is I could go back to Singapore, tell some friends, raise some money, come back, paint some walls, and then go back and hate and complain about my job and my life. Or I can actually dedicate 1 year to raise money for schools there. And it's been 3 years. So yeah, it's been 3 years.
So what was the lay of? I think this segues nicely into what was the lay of the land over there when you first reached? You talked about how barren it is. I guess how I think different doesn't even cut it. Yeah. How different it is, like it is here, because until you actually see it in person, right? Then you actually feel it.
I think the first thing was I was so used to just pulling out my phone and taking a Grab anywhere in Singapore. And for there, it's like if I want to get somewhere, I need to walk for hours. It's insane. And just things that like we take for granted, clean water, you know, like hot showers. Oh my God, it's
You get a bucket.
Not even a bucket.
Not even a bucket.
Not even a bucket, man. Like I would tell locals like, oh, I need to shower, and people just start laughing. It's like, what? We just shower once a week or something with cold water. I was like, no way. So a lot of things that I really had to get used to it. I also noticed a lot of things which make me quite interested. Like I started to see like a lot of men were not at home, and the mothers were young, the girls would work in the field. Young girls, probably 13, 14, already had kids and stuff. So a lot of things that wasn't very used to seeing.
Yep.
So the learning curve was huge for me. And as the more I learn, the more I explore, the more I realize that the world is so much bigger, and like there's so much thing I wasn't aware about. And I just went on this like rabbit hole of discovering, like the world beyond our borders, and it's even until today I'm still learning something. So it's been an incredible journey. Yeah.
You said after the 1 month backpacking trip and you got the notice from someone and you flew back a week later. Were you expecting to do anything, or were you even expecting anything?
No, my goal was like, I just want to visit a school.
Okay.
I didn't promise I would do anything for them. I just wanted to visit a school. I just felt like if I didn't see, the trip wouldn't be completed. But I still remember that night when I booked that air ticket to go back again. Everyone thought I was crazy. But that, even until today, taught me about something, like sometimes we spend way too much time analyzing things, and, like some of the best decisions are the most impulsive one. Like, you just do it and don't think about it. So that night booking that flight ticket was like, it kind of changed the trajectory of my whole entire career, life purpose and everything. And it's crazy. Yeah. So now like I try not to overanalyze things too much. I just even this was a reminder. Yeah. It's a reminder.
So how did that first trip return actually? How did it lead you to want to continue your efforts to deliver books and to deliver some sort of education over there?
Right. So the first thing when I got back home was to leave my job, was to have the courage, because back then I was working in Bangkok actually, and
Bangkok.
Yeah, I was working in Bangkok, man. Yeah, it's the best place to be when you're in your early 20s. I was working in Bangkok for 1-2 years, and had quite a comfortable position, and to leave my role was the most difficult part, because I had like staff under me, and like when I left I had an entire team leaving as well.
Was there uncertainty
in terms of
leaving to do something like this?
For sure, but initially my goal was, kind of half. First of like, just need an excuse to travel to Nepal again. Yeah. And I didn't want people to think like, well, he just leave his job and, like bum around. At least I want to do something purposeful. Yep. Plus, I was very interested to see how I could apply my business acumen and start something that's different, rather than like just collect some used clothes and sand and stuff like that. I really want to do something different, and for me it was an easy decision, because I asked myself, like, would I be doing this if in 5 years time, like when I'm much later in my life, have a family, have different obligation, have kids? No way, man. Absolutely no way. So like, if I were to do it, it's now. It's really, the longer I wait, it's just insane. So once I got that out of the way, everything else was just simple already. Yeah. So
everything else kind of, would you say it fell into place, or was it still, this is just chapter 1 of a long line of problems that you have to solve looking for?
Right. The first thing I knew I needed to do was to raise money. I knew I needed some way to find donations. I spent a lot of time just reading books about how charities started, how they are run. I talked to a lot of people, a lot of non-profit leaders. I guess the most difficult part of me was how do I raise money and how do I come out and tell the story? What's my story? It's not, again, if there's one thing I learned, like, you can go around telling people like, oh, the kids are dying, the kids are hungry and stuff, and people still don't buy that story, but people really buy when you come out and tell your own story. Because when you raise money, it's about, when people are donating, then there's one big thing I learned is they're not donating to the kids. They're donating to you because they trust you. And it took me a long time to like figure that out. Like in the first year, I raised so little money because I was just showing kids pictures of kids and stuff. And after 1 year, I just decided to come out and actually tell my story. Then things started to change.
Why do you think that is? That is a very interesting thing to ponder.
Because look, I mean, if you just go to giving.asia, there's 101 great organization doing great work, and just serving all the needy countries and communities around the world. But a lot of them don't, it's just like, it's just in a non-profit, just in a charity. I think in the whole non-profit charity space, the number one thing that's lacking is trust. And I've seen a lot of the most successful ones are the ones that the founder, it's the founder's story. They go and champion the cause. They put their face to the brand, and people just donate and support the person running the project more than the project itself. At least at the very beginning. Obviously, now when you look at big organizations like Save the Children, it's really about the cause already. But at the very start, to really kind of get it off the ground, it's really about the story.
It's very interesting you mentioned that, because if we remove the context of helping children and whatever you just said, it is applicable to raising money for a startup.
Yes.
It is entirely applicable because people invest in the founder and their vision.
Exactly.
And if not for the context of, it is for social enterprise, it is for charity or whatever, it is essentially the same.
You're absolutely right. Like, I work in the tech sector, right? So very common to see startup raising seed rounds from venture capital. And at the seed round, nobody really care about, everyone has good ideas, right? They invest in the founder. And you have a great idea, but they don't think that you can grow then, So I think that's, I always encourage like people who want to raise money, go and tell your story and don't hide behind the cause. Your story has to somehow link to the cause, but people are going to support you because of you, not so much the cause, at least at the very beginning.
Did you face any personal difficulty telling this personal story of yours?
Definitely, because like one of the main reasons why I spent 2 weeks walking the Himalayas, because I had bad anxieties. I had very bad anxiety attacks. I was a very shy, introverted person, and one of my goals was to spend 1 month alone in a foreign country where I would put myself in the most uncomfortable position ever, because that scared the hell out of me.
Okay.
Back then, I would say I wouldn't even like to eat alone outside, because I felt that was weird as hell. So going all the way to the extent was like a huge how do I say, like huge jump for me. And coming up to tell the story would also mean that like what's playing in my head is like, okay man, my family's gonna hear about it, and like I'm always the kind of like, I want to be tough at home, I want to be vulnerable and all that kind of stuff. So it took me a long time to like come out and actually tell the story, and to actually put my face and the story behind the brand, not just we're trying to raise money for schools there. So it makes a big difference.
Does it make you a little bit more vulnerable, quote unquote vulnerable, in a sense, because you are out there, your story is out there. It is for people to know, to acknowledge, even to criticize. Whatever.
I for sure I'm a big fan of, if you read Brené Brown's work, you cannot be brave without being vulnerable, right? You cannot find courage without being vulnerable. So, definitely, definitely once you come on and tell the story and you kind of like drop down all the shield that you're hiding behind, then you feel kind of like invincible. Then the next thing is like, okay, now how can I like scale this? Because the thing that's blocking you kind of like overcome it already. And once I was able to kind of go on and tell the story and everything, then it's just like I'm going out like all the way, like to make sure everyone hears the story, you know, because
So could you speak of the first time that you perhaps returned to Nepal with an action plan to do something, and how did you even organize something like this? Because do pardon my ignorance, but what is the lay of the land over there? What do they have internet? Is it slower? Like, how do you even communicate? Do they use phones?
Okay, so Nepal is a huge country. The main city is Kathmandu. They do have internet, but very sloppy.
Sure.
And yeah, so they do have internet. They do have like basic things and stuff. But if you move further into the rural places, a lot of places don't have internet. One thing I found out was like, man, in the most rural places, people have Facebook. And they have Facebook, they use their Facebook in their little Nokia phone. So that was one thing I was so surprised by how fast Facebook has moved. They have, no internet. Clean water was a thing. Like it was very inaccessible. Phone. I've been to places where there's no lights. Yeah, just the entire village is like, 5 p.m. it's dark already. So, but again, there are places with a lot of these, like they do have proper lights and water and stuff. So it really depends on which way you go. But the places that I travel to most, spend most time are usually the ones without all these basic needs.
Because it seems like there is, like in the main city, there are certain key infrastructures, but the further you move out, there is a very distinct lack of infrastructure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Even the roads, it's terrible. They just have terrible roads there. They don't have even proper roads until now.
So how did you decide that let's focus on one particular issue, which is education and books? Because I've heard of organizations that say they go and they build houses and build something like that. So how did you decide, okay, let's focus on education. Let's focus on books. And this is the way I'm going to serve this particular community.
Okay. The way on how you approach projects have changed, but at the very beginning, the initial idea was we wanted to collect books in Singapore and send books there. That was the very initial idea. I did that once and I thought it was a bad idea because to stuff into my luggage was more expensive.
My God.
It was just so expensive.
It sounds like hell.
And the very first idea was to identify where the schools are. So I literally just flew to Thailand and I just went to like message random locals on Facebook. It's like type Nepal and then whoever has a Nepali name, I just like wrote into them, and that's what I did. I stayed in a hostel the whole day and just messaged. And eventually we got linked to Rotary clubs. Rotary clubs, we have it in Singapore also. They are like this group of individuals who come together as a club members, and every year they do something to help the local community. So in Singapore we have a lot of Rotary clubs. They I think mainly rich people, but in Nepal we also have Rotary student clubs and stuff. Their main goal is to support the community members,
like with different needs and
with different needs. Okay. So I approached them, told them that we're gonna find some schools. Like I'm gonna find the money, you guys gonna find a school, and then gonna help carry out the whole operations. But I'm gonna find the money. So I just went a lot of meetings, and we decided that at the first project we wanted to do was called the Field Backpack Campaign. They identified a few schools that with students without like school bags and books. So they will organize the transportation, where to buy the bags, the books, and all that kind of stuff. And I flew back to Singapore and I just raised money. So the first project we raised, I think about $8,000, and then I would send 100% of that, bought the bags, and then we went to distribute it to I think about 700 students, 6 schools, some of the most rural parts of the country. And then
so you went to different...
we actually went. We went to different like villages, and did the distribution. So that was the very first project I did, and ever since then I kind of knew how it operated. Like the way on how you operate in all these rural countries, you gotta first find a very trusted local partner. You can't go there and do it alone because you don't speak the language and stuff. So the local partner for me, even until today, is the most critical part of the whole project. So we find a local partner and then let them identify the needs in the school. And for your role, it's to raise the money. So I knew my position would be, how can I raise the money? How can I constantly find the money?
Yeah.
And then find partners to identify the schools.
It's interesting you said that the partner is crucial, and for them to identify the issue and the problem, and not for you to identify.
Yes.
Because I would imagine it would be different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research, and I think one of the biggest failure of charities and non-profit is when they try to go to a new country and try to identify and tell them what to do, what they need. Whereas the locals, they know better than anyone else what they need. And I think we shouldn't get in the way of their own community. And, like, do what you do best, which is to raise money in your country because the money is big. And then let the locals do what they do best, which is implement a project, the program, and find the places that need help the most.
I could imagine a scenario where something like that, listening or even giving a listening ear to the locals and having them dictate this project that you wanted to do yourself and you raise money could be pretty humbling, because you need to listen to someone, actually listen and know, oh, we actually want this. Whatever you propose is not that important and it doesn't even fit.
Yeah, exactly. I actually have, I had a few incidents before, like, I remember at the very early stage, man, there's so many mistakes. I think I remember at one village that I went and I was like, okay, we're gonna, someone told me like, it's good to do some handicraft and sell them and stuff. So I thought, okay, that's what we're gonna do. We went to a village. We went to speak with some mothers who were single moms, and we asked them like, okay, we're gonna teach you guys how to sew like clothes and stuff, and then you guys can sell and raise money, and then you can send your kids to school. So I was like, we're gonna fund the sewing machine and stuff. Everyone thought it was a great idea. Everyone clapped, and then we went to one of the ladies' house to like do a further like follow-up interview. And we saw like a broken sewing machine inside, and we asked her like, what's that? She said, oh, last year the United Nations came, did the same thing. And that's the problem, right? Like, we always think that's what they want, but then we just take some photos and then pass them the stuff and then leave, and you don't teach them how to, for example, fix it when it's down or maintain it or even find a market for them. What do they do when they finish sewing the clothes? Who's going to sell them, So yeah, I think it's a wrong approach to go and say like, hey, this is what you need to do, rather than you ask them like, how can we help what you already know, and then like, let's get out of the way. Yeah.
But that involves more than just a pretty picture. Exactly,
yeah. And sometimes it's, the things that they do, it's not like pretty at all. For example, right now we don't, we used to help set up school libraries and stuff, but right now we fund a range of projects. We work with a partner who works in different schools across the country, and every quarter the partner submits a few proposals to us, asking us like, proposing a few projects they want to start. It could range from starting a classroom library to starting a science lab. Last month, we've helped fund a science teacher. We gave a grant to a science teacher to start like a science lab in her school.
Wow.
Because she wanted to promote like science, chemistry, and to be funded the project. So right now, there's no one fixed project that we fund. We fund whatever that is most impactful in that particular school, in that particular community, and we give grants. Yeah.
So what were some of the pain points that you have noticed when you go down and you talk to the people and the families? What were some of their pain points? Is it the education? Is it the lack of, let's say you're saying, you can make the good, but there is no means to sell it because A, there's no market, B, it takes 2 hours to walk there, 2 hours to walk, but that's 4 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue is always like household poverty. One of the main reasons why kids are dropping out of school is because they just simply had no money, so they use their kids as labor. So they got to get them to work. So eventually for us, the key question is, how can we create income for their parents and focus more on the parents rather than the kids itself? But that's a problem that the Gates Foundation and all the big guys are tackling. So again, there's, of course, there are some very successful projects, but that's eventually where I want to work in. But for now, we're small. We do what we can for the school. But that has always been the biggest problem. It's how can we focus on the parents rather than the students, and how can we help the parents generate a sustainable income so that they can then leave their kids in school and not pull them out, and then or even have the option to send their kids to a private school rather than a public school. In Nepal, 1 out of 3 students don't make it out of public school. So when they enter grade 1,
high turnover,
high turnover. And before grade 10, they'll leave to work or to get early marriage and stuff. But I think for private school, it's up to 90-95%. Yeah, but they actually pay for it. Yeah, you know, when the parents pay money to put a kid in school, they made sure that they pass their...
There's a lot of things riding on the kid to actually pass.
Exactly. And if the teacher don't turn up for school, you see the parents waiting outside to demand for an answer. But in public school, you can just walk into any public school in a rural village of Nepal or India or any like low-income countries. Chances are there will be some classes with no teachers inside. Yeah. This is a big problem. Teachers absentees and the parents can't do anything. It's free. Right. So the quality of education is terrible in public school. And yeah, I think that's one of the main reason, you know, of this whole crisis, I guess. Yeah.
On a tangent, are you optimistic about perhaps society coming together to solve this poverty issue? Because it is a long-standing problem. Perhaps, I mean, not too long ago, maybe like 50 to even 60 years, a lot of the world was in poverty. And because of technology, because all these different inventions, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think the Western countries, most of it is out of it.
Right.
Even like ASEAN, some of it are still inside, but a good majority of it is out of it. So do you foresee a time where it is solved?
Oh, for sure, 100%. But it's going to take us a while. I think the thing that is slowing things down, it's really just politics, man. You know, it's a lot of corruption, politics, and that has to be solved first. You know, like we have enough money to solve the world's problem. I'm very optimistic about that. I think it's just like it's stuck within among the people in power, and until we can figure out how to solve that, then you know it's gonna take us quite a while.
So I guess it's the allocation and the usage, and I guess what you mentioned earlier, like some of these charities are obscure. They are not totally transparent.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of those transparency and politics involved. Yeah. Otherwise, again, we have the money to solve a lot of problems.
At least it's good to know it's not a money problem.
It is. Yeah, it's not a money problem. We have the money. Yeah, we have the money. Yeah, and also I think in order to really change things to speed up the process, we need a lot more talents in this space. And
could you elaborate on that? Because if you were to use the word talent in the context of any company, that makes more sense. But in a social enterprise, what type of talent are you looking at?
I think just like any other talent you need in a for-profit corporation, right? Like, you know, we have this notion that if you work in a social sector, you cannot get high salary. Your salary must be low. And you know, honestly, with low salary and you pay peanuts, you get peanuts. How can you attract some of the best talents? Like, people wouldn't want to work for a charity. You want to work in Google, Facebook, the big companies. And how are we going to change the world when all the smart people are going, you know, the big corporation, right? Whereas the ones that needed, you need the real talents to be in the social sector. And imagine all the talents working in all these big companies are in the social sector instead. We can create technologies and innovation to change. So I think we have to change the conversation at least on why stop looking at. A lot of people like to judge the efficiency of a charity or non-profit by how much they spend on overhead. So if you spend a lot of overheads, you're bad.
Interesting.
Yeah. People look at all the P&L and say, you're spending way too much money on the people. They get high salary. You shouldn't get this and that. But that's just totally wrong, you know. In fact, I think they should pay just as competitive as the ones working in the different for-profit corporations. And I think once we are able to accept that, then we can attract more talents into this space. And like for example, my parents and families were used to say like, when are you going to get a real job? You know, you're working in a social enterprise, one day you got to think about your future. But like, I'm already thinking about my future, right? Like, who says I can't get a salary just like anyone else? Not now for sure. Now I'm way far behind, but that's the goal, right? Imagine you can work a job that's purposeful, making a difference while, making sure that you're comfortable. Okay, you can never get rich. You can never be Bill Gates rich. Let's make that clear.
The context of that sentence means there can only be one Bill Gates.
Yes.
You can never be like that.
Yeah. you cannot be, and also the image is going to be very different. You cannot be trying to run a social business and then spend money like Conor McGregor, They don't make sense. So sure, there are some things that you can't do, but you still can, have a nice car, nice place, go on vacation. You can lead a very comfortable lifestyle while working in a social company. And that's my dream, to really combine what I love doing and looking as a long-term career. It's what I'm excited about.
Yeah.
And then, once I'm able to do it, then you open the doors for a lot of people, at least the young people out there, to say like, hey, it's possible, man. I don't have to work in a bank or be an investment banker and stuff like that. Yeah.
I think just looking at how people of a younger generation think about the idea of work, I think there is sort of like a paradigm shift. Sure, money is ultimately important because of the society we live in. You need to pay for things, you need to barter for goods, all that shit. But there is also the important social aspects that people are considering. Case in point, like let's say if it's a faceless bank and you go into a bank to work, chances are people will burn out. They will get to a certain point in life and they realize, what am I living for, and all the other things, and then they will perhaps do something social related. And if from the onset there is a possibility that you could work in a social enterprise for competitive pay in accordance to whatever sector is outside, I think that is certainly a way to think about work, because it's if I always believe that social enterprises or something like social work will attract the kind of people that actually want to do it, because it's not for everybody.
Exactly.
Like the talent, you can have the talent, let's say if you're a web designer, to code and to design everything, but to get someone to go on the ground to actually interact with these people and to have the empathy to do it, I think that's a separate thing.
It is.
That can't be bought, that can't be taught. That is a totally different set of skills.
Yeah. And it's not for everyone, like it's not for everyone. But like I totally agree with you, it's changing. I think at least a lot of young people right now are seeking that. I mean, we spend 3/4 of our life working, man. And that's what
depressing.
I always... Yeah, I know, man.
3/4 and maybe like 20% of the 1/4 sleeping.
Exactly.
80% of that.
Right. And now with the whole pandemic, work from home, you really kind of blur the lines between work and home, work and play already. So 3/4 of life is a lot. And why, like at least I don't want to speak for everyone else, but for me, I really want to do something that I really enjoy and wake up like inspired by. And I'm one of those lucky few that found it, and I was so reluctant to let it go. Yeah, that's why I try to work so hard.
Would you consider it your purpose to create this particular idea of a social enterprise that is able to sustain itself with regards to or whatever project, and to attract the talent? Would you consider like the purpose to do this?
I'm not sure if I would call it purpose, but like that's the goal. I mean, I think I would consider my purpose to be able to inspire through doing what most people aren't doing, going this path and making it like people could see like, hey, it's possible, and hopefully get to inspire other people to go out and try new things. You don't have to go and change the world, right? But hopefully get to inspire some people to go out and maybe do one thing that scares them. Go out that outside their comfort zone and do a thing, and who knows, you might create some change in yourself or create some positive change in the world around them. Yeah, and that's what I think my purpose is. I'm so inspired to do this every day, because I know that someone hearing the story may be inspired to not go out and change the world, but like say, hey man, maybe there's something I really want to do, but I'm just afraid of how people think and do this and that. And just go out and try to do something different. Yeah,
it's interesting that this idea of going out to change the world, quote unquote, is very prevalent. But hearing from your story, the first thing that changed is yourself. Yeah, you went there and you had you met the burning bush, and you met the kid, and you had a change in thinking, which starts from you. Exactly.
It's Books Beyond Borders. It's more than just a project. It's a personal life goal, and I used to tell my friend like don't ask me like what I'm doing, but ask me like who I'm becoming. And you know, if you will speak to me 5 years ago, I've changed a lot. You know, I'm more inspired to get things right. I have great habits now, which I would consider good habits that I ditched a lot of like bad habits I had when I was, you know, back in the days and stuff. So it changed me as a person, and so it's not just about the work, it's about the whole life, which I'm very excited about. Yeah.
So going back to what Books Beyond Borders do, you bring books to them and you do different types of projects with them.
Yeah.
How's the response to it? Because you talked about the education system over there, and sometimes if it's the village is rural, there might not be teachers there to teach, which presumes the fact that even though you might bring the books to them, they might not be able to read. They need someone to teach them.
Yeah.
So how was that?
Yeah. So we actually don't bring books to them. We collect books in Singapore and we sell them in Singapore. And then we raise the money and we give out grants to organizations that are working in a school. So for example, one of the organizations we are working with right now is Teach for Nepal. And what they do is they train teachers, some of the smartest teachers in the capital, and they put all these teachers in all the rural public school for 2 years to teach. And we give them grants so that they could cover like teacher training programs. We give them grants so that teachers could start their own projects. For example, like I said, the science club, or you know, they want to start a classroom library. And that's what we do. So our partners, which is why I explained it's very important, they are the one that ensuring they have spent decades making sure that their work in the classrooms are impactful. And for us, our job is to raise the money and fund their most successful projects. Yeah. So they will let us know, for example, what they are intending to work, what's the expected impact, and then how much they need to do that. And we will decide whether or not we want to fund the project. So it's a little bit like a foundation.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And that's how Bill Gates runs his foundation. He don't go to the village and say, I'm going to build this for you. They provide seed grants to all little organizations who have a great idea, and he gave them the grants to scale. So it's almost like a venture capital.
That is exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
How has the impact been? Have you heard back from people who have went through some of the programs that they started? How has the impact been? Okay,
so we've only been doing this for now close to 3 years. The first year was very straightforward. It was distributing of materials, so kind of like a one-off thing. So education for the impact is very difficult to measure because it's not like healthcare. For example, you fund a surgery for a kid or something like that. It's long term. You could probably got to see follow the kid through going to secondary school and stuff. So I cannot give an actual we change whose life and stuff. But for now, we raised slightly over $30,000 for an organization. We've helped train and fund teachers in more than a dozen schools across the country now. There's a few different projects that we've done. We've set up about 4 school libraries already that's still operating right now. This year, actually 2-3 months ago, we helped rebuild a school that was destroyed by a flood. 4 classrooms were destroyed. So we raised money through a combination of donations and using our profits from selling books to help rebuild the classroom so that kids can continue going back to school. We have pictures and videos of that. So I look at how much our partners have done because of the grants we've given. And that gives me the confidence that we're on the right track. Yeah.
What other signifiers would looking out into the future? What other signifiers would determine that, as you said, you're on the right track?
I guess the number one indicator for me, which is again still very difficult to achieve, is how much have our partners or our grants have helped decrease the number of dropouts in a certain school. But that's a very expensive indicator. Like you need to do, it's very difficult to test how your programs actually reduce the dropouts and stuff. But I would say that's a very big indicator of how successful your projects are. Unfortunately, right now we're not at that stage yet to test that. But if we can move towards that, fund projects that maybe have an impact in reducing school dropouts, I think that's the one thing that I would love to tackle, because there's one thing that the longer you can keep the kids in school, the higher chance of them completing their education, moving to university, colleges and stuff. So I think that's still the most important factor.
So I guess in a way, a quote unquote like a problem like keeping kids in school, there are multiple solutions to solve one problem, but it's about finding one that would best fit the local context with the amount of resources that you have to ensure like perhaps a high efficacy or efficiency rate.
Correct. So there's a few, like I mentioned, solutions. The number one is you can figure out how to get their parents' money, because their parents are ultimately are the ones who decide whether or not their kids go to school.
So kids are young, I assume?
Yes, I think secondary school, primary to secondary school, yeah. So if you can figure out how to get income for their parents, then kids stay in school. There's a highest assumption.
But it's like one problem will lead to another problem.
Yes, yeah. So it could be that the parents are earning money and then now they need their kids so they can earn more.
Yep.
And then they still drop it out, and you have no control over that.
Yep.
Another option which I knew some non-profits have done is like they provide meals for the school, and research have shown that when there are more meals in school, kids they are more motivated to go to school just because they are cooked meals. So
it's like incentivization.
Exactly. So I know some charities that provides like meals to school. I also think one of the biggest factor is the quality of the teachers. So if you have untrained teachers, unmotivated teachers in school, kids they fight with the teachers very often, they are not motivated to go to school, then high chance of dropping out. So that's where we are very excited about, which is supporting quality teachers training program, and that's where our grants are going right now, and to support that which is investing in teachers.
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned all that, because I could imagine a very ham-fisted way to do this is to gather all your resources to go there and just to give them these things, but without actually understanding what are these small little problems that you might not encounter when you go there, but the people will know.
Right.
Because them arguing with the teacher, that's such a niche problem, and a very it happens once every 2-3 times that you probably might not even notice. But the very ham-fisted way to do it is like, I bring all these things, I give it to you, you're expected to perform. But life doesn't work like that. Exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It's much more complicated, and even until today, there's a lot of different issues like in the caste is a big issue in Nepal.
The what, sorry?
The caste system.
Okay.
So in Nepal, everyone has a different caste. It's like your ranking, and when you're from the lower caste, I've met kids from the lower caste before. Wow, the experience is crazy. They can't sit with the rest of the kids. They can't drink from the same water. They can't play together. They can't go each other's house.
It's horrifying.
Yeah. And I have students walking up to me in school before, asking me like, hey, just now like the kid you're talking to, which caste was he from? Just to make sure that, we can be friends, because like my parents wouldn't allow that. He just wanted to make sure. So it's a big thing.
And these are kids.
Kids, man. Oh. It's crazy. Yeah. And you have like girls have one of the biggest advantage there. I think child marriage is the biggest thing, at least in the places that I've been. You have places where when girls have their periods, it's like a taboo. That means they are like they're possessed.
Oh, okay.
So they can't go to school. They can't even sleep in their own homes. Yeah. And when you get all these things combined together, it's a complex problem.
It's cultural.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not you can't get a one-size-fits-all solution to solve education. But I'm very optimistic about solving this problem, because I don't think we should look at it as like, hey, it's way too complicated, we shouldn't do it at all, because I've seen projects that have impact before. I've seen our local partners have inspired kids to go out and change and inspire their friends, their siblings and stuff. So I know it works. Although it's not, again, it won't solve the world's problem, but we shouldn't deter anyone from going in and trying to start something and try, even if you feel like for-profits and startups have, 9 out of 10 startups fail, right?
Yep.
Why can't non-profits and social businesses like try things and fail? Yeah, so yeah.
Is it ever overwhelming? I can imagine one of the reasons why people don't try to do businesses with a social cause, because it is overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's overwhelming, borderline nihilistic. As we just pointed out, the problem of kids not going to school or kids not learning is linked to their parents.
Yep.
And the parents' problem is linked to the cultural problem.
Right.
And the cultural problem is linked to their history.
Right.
So when you consider all these different, like the mind map of problems you have to solve, and you're like this one individual trying to raise funds to do this, I mean, like the odds are unfortunately against you.
Yeah. I think my advice to people is to pick one problem that you're familiar with and you want to commit yourself doing it, and then like just do it, and then partner with people that's doing other things. For example, if you want to invest in teachers, then you can partner with an organization that's providing meals, and then you work in the same school together, and then you work with an organization that's focusing on parents. So like you work collectively and try not to recreate the wheel and overlap each other. I think that's again happening very often. So it would make no sense if I were to I would not work with a local partner, but try to create something there. And then I'm competing with the local organizations that are really trying to do something different. So I made it very clearly we are not trying to start something. Our position stays as what it is. Our job is to raise money. This is one thing local partners don't have access to. Is to tell a story, raise some money, and then partner with organizations that already have boots on the ground working on the projects, and we fund them. So it's like a partnership. It's not like there's no competition. Yeah.
So it's to raise capital and to capital allocate, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you had the chance to go back to Nepal since COVID hit?
No, man.
No?
I came back because they were closing down. So I spent about I go to Nepal about 2-3 times a year.
Okay.
And I spent about 1 month there. So I actually been there 10 times already since the first time I've been there. And no, I haven't been back. It's the longest time.
Yeah.
It's sad because it's important for me to go back, because every time when things get hard here in Singapore, going back there kind of reignite that fire, that passion, and that purpose. And sometimes I fall into this space like, oh man, you sure all your friends are and then you start comparing, and and then like the trip is very important for me, not just to see the work, but also remind yourself why you're doing this. And I've been 2 years, the longest time since I've been there, so it's very difficult for me.
So for the record, it's not like when he started the social enterprise, it's a smooth sailing. There are still problems every day. Okay.
Every day, man.
For the record.
Of course, man.
So the movie doesn't end when you start the social enterprise and everybody's happy.
It's like when every day is a new fire you have to fight. Yeah. It's tough business, man.
So to reflect the conversation back to Books Beyond Borders locally, have you expanded the team, or is it still just you?
Okay, so very thankfully, I have a great bunch of volunteers that comes every week to help out in the little space. We just moved. Finally, we just decided to move. I got kicked out of my aunt's office. Yeah.
So it's less of you deciding to move and you getting kicked out.
Yeah. So I started from my grandfather's spare bedroom, and then
I saw the pictures.
Oh, you saw the pictures. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my aunt kind of politely kicked me out of her office because just had way too much inventory, and then this finally got our new space. And now with my new space, I'm very happy that because now I have volunteers coming in every week. I've got one intern. I'm trying to hire another intern, and hopefully get to grow it, which is only possible when I look at it as a social enterprise, because now we have profits and I could invest in growing it. Whereas it's not possible. I would feel bad using donated money to try to hire an intern or to pay a rent.
Yep.
Right. So right now it's growing. Yeah.
I believe you're storing it in the store hub, and you got that one as a sponsorship. That is quite interesting.
Yes. Store hub. Okay. Very, very thankful to Store Hub. Well, if they ever hear this, I need to make sure that I feature them, because they gave me a container when my grandfather's room actually exploded, and I was so panicky because I was putting all the boxes outside my house, and the
Wait, you're brushing it over, like the room exploded.
I mean, no, there's absolutely no place to walk.
I thought the room exploded.
No.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, it looks like it had an explosion. But there was just way too many books coming in. I was storing outside. You know, I live in a HDB. You know, the town council was happy. My neighbors and the folks at Store Hub loved the storage so much. They gave me a big container for a year, and I could like stuff my inventory there. I'm still there actually. So yeah, and then when Store Hub got full, then I went to my aunt's office because she had a little spare office. Yeah. And then that got full again. So
was this store right now, was it like a milestone of yours to actually have the space?
Oh, for sure. Because right now, we are open to the public. It's no longer like if you come to visit us on the weekend, people can come in and it's like a little exhibition / bookstore where people can come and see the project and actually hear and see. And you know, I get to share the story in person. It's very it changes the game because back then it was more like social media and like selling books online, very transactional. But ever since people get to see the person behind the brand, see how things are run, then in terms of book donations, we're getting much more right now. You're also getting a lot of traction. A lot of people are just buying books from us and regulars. We have people coming every weekend. And yeah, we've been on a very comfortable growth right now. Yeah.
So I want to shift the conversation back to you wanting to invest in, I think, the interns you were saying.
Yeah.
Are you looking for anything in particular? What I mean by that is like, why these particular interns that you are considering to bring on the team?
You mean, what am I looking out for an intern, or why am I looking for an intern?
It's like what interns are to me a dime a dozen. That interns, they serve different functions and they have different capabilities. Like why them in particular? Have they worked with you for a bit, or are they more inclined to perhaps be on the ground? Let's say when you go over, like is there anything in particular like that?
No, because we cannot afford a full timer.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the truth, man. We can't afford a full timer, man. Yeah. I've worked with interns before, and they're young and motivated. They're ready to roll up their sleeve and get, they're just hungry. And I love working with interns. We have, I've worked with some really smart, motivated interns, and sometimes maybe even better than full timers. Yeah. So I think at least for now, at least for the next 1 or 2 years, if I get a chance, I'll just hire all interns. Yeah.
Is there a particular type of attitude you're looking for?
Okay, I'm definitely looking out for someone with high energy. So for me, that's a big thing. There are sometimes you just you meet those people and they just suck the energy out of you, like a vampire. They suck. And it's a tough thing, man. Like it's a tough business, and there are a lot of times where we deal with secondhand books, right? Yep. So it might look nice on the outside, but on a day-to-day, you're just like sorting and dusty old books and stuff, and it's not fun. And the only way it's fun if we make it fun. Yep. So the volunteers that we have right now, they are extremely fun, extremely optimistic, just energetic. And although we're just doing something like sorting books and data entry and stuff, but that's so important in order to keep the whole culture of what we're trying to do. Yep. So energy level is like super important for me. So to contrast yours. Yes.
Okay. Yep. So in collecting secondhand books, I've seen some documentaries about other organizations collecting secondhand stuff, and people often use it as a guise to dump their old stuff. Let's say for secondhand food, secondhand clothing. I've seen some they do like a journalistic video on it, and people just give expired food, stuff like that. So what have you seen when people give like these secondhand things? Like, I want to know,
everything, man, like Bibles and the Quran.
Do you have let's say we will not accept these things?
Oh, for sure, yeah. Back in the days, like we didn't have, so you get anything that's made of paper, and it's like we had toilet papers also. For real? Yeah, it's everything. Toys and stuff. They're like, okay, we only give you books, and then under the books they stuff like like things that like just files and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you definitely look like a bit of like Kalanguni. Yep. But now we have like quite of a strict process that anyone who want to donate a book have to send at least a photo of like the book, and we'll decide whether or not we want to take it. Yeah, and if you want, we actually pay for a courier to pick it up from your house. Yeah, so it's quite easy for the people who want to donate, but we also have this quality check whether or not like it makes sense for us to spend the money.
Yep.
Yeah.
What is your own personal history with books? Are you a big reader? Or
funny story, no. I actually have never finished a book until I was like 2021. I just like hated books. And I guess I just started reading when I was in the army. And ever since then, I was just so into like, ever since I decided to change my life to like really focus on getting serious with it, I found a lot of answers and inspiration from reading biographies. I'm a big fan of memoirs, biography, and self-help. And yeah, so then I think from then on, I just started like collecting books and buying and reading. Even I now have a big library in my own home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But is it still solely focused on the biographies and memoirs, or have you skirted the perimeter and tried different genres? I think one of the more interesting things about books in general is that if they're sort of by categories, but even within these categories, there is also like very different niches about stuff.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm not a big fan of novels and fiction.
Okay. Why is that? You don't like to read about dragons?
No. I don't know. I know my friends been telling me like, yo, you need to start reading more fiction novels. I get it. Okay, first of all, I'm very bad with names.
Okay.
And like in novels, they have like 10 characters, 10 names, and after like 5 pages, I can't keep track which character is what. So it's tough on that. But I also don't really enjoy watching movies. I only enjoy watching like documentaries and stuff because I feel like every information I consume, I need to learn something. Again, I don't think that's a good. I think that's quite disruptive because you're always on the work mode.
Yep.
So I don't know. I just don't enjoy if I don't learn something out of it. Like I need to watch a documentary. I can't watch like Squid Game. No, I have not watched Squid Game. I have not.
Do you know the premise of it? Have people told you?
No, I think it's sort of like a dystopian thingy where the rich.
It is basically a death game.
I know.
For money.
But but I know there's some meaning behind it and stuff, however they interpret it, but like it's not real. Like, you know, I can't watch. I haven't watched Game of Thrones, Pirates of the Caribbean, like all these famous things I didn't watch. So yeah, you know, just at least for now, a lot of great memoirs, non-fiction philosophy. I love philosophy. Yeah. Self-help, anything that I can learn something from.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what is there a particular style of curation for the books that come into Books Beyond Borders and then they go onto the shelf? Is there a particular what is that
sure.
like?
So the very first thing we do is we look at like the quality of the book. There are some books that have been published like decades ago. We don't even put that up. So like quality when it's published, we give it a rating like how we think the highest possibility of them we are selling them, because if we put out a book that no one's want to buy, then it's
going to take up shelf space. Yeah.
So we give them a bit of rating and when it's published and if it's so we now basically take shelf those that, you know, whatever you see at Kinokuniya for sure. Yeah. And like really high quality books. That's what we focus on right now. And very surprisingly that people are very generous to give those away. Yeah. So
are you like always surprised by the generosity of people giving away all these things to sell and to fund the whole thing?
For sure, like our whole entire business model is betting on the generosity of people. If you have a chance to go visit our space, we had 5,000 books right now. Every single one was donated by people, and we wouldn't have been able to run this if people would not buy or donate their books to us. So it's like a bet on generosity, you know. So we, you know, I'm very grateful for that. Yeah, just a lot of very generous people out there.
So if we were to look at this like a conventional business, how does this scale? Do you perhaps take on different secondhand items from people? Do you go beyond books? Yeah. How does that look like?
Well, that's a great question. Honestly, I thought about it, but I just trying to spend too much time thinking about it. Look, Amazon started selling books. I'm not saying it's not possible. I just got to remove the word books from the title. it is definitely possible. What I'm trying to do right now, hopefully, is to build a brand, not a book business. Because when you build a brand, you can sell anything. Like Nike doesn't just sell shoes. And I'm still again right now finding like what our brand stands for, what's our tonality, who our target audience and stuff. But one thing I know for sure is that I'm trying to build a brand that inspires. Through the work we do, we hopefully want to inspire people. Books for me has always been a thing where we just bring people together, but it was never about the book. The book is just a book. But everyone who's been at least to my new space on the weekend right now, I've made so many new friends, heard so many stories of trauma and this and that. And I was able to connect with so many people and actually build a community now at the space that I have. Cool. And it would not have been possible if, we didn't have sort of like these common interests of books. And just books have these amazing things like food. You get to bring people around a table and you can just have great conversations. And I guess that's the special thing about what we're doing. Books allow us to bring these people of a common interest, common purpose together, and then something magical is happening. But I just haven't kind of like figured out what it is yet. But I know a lot of very great things have happened. That like this podcast is a result of your friend being there, bought some books, introducing me, and now I'm speaking to you. That's because of books. And it was never happen if we don't have a space, didn't have books. And
it's very circumstantial. And I mean, you can plan scenarios, but it's very difficult to plan these things.
Exactly, right? So there's a lot of possibility of us moving outside there, but I just need to be laser focused right now. Yeah.
It sounds like you're kind of on your way. I mean, to figuring out what the brand is about.
Yeah.
Because I've never read or heard the word brand with a social enterprise before. Like I've never seen it in the same sentence. It's usually a brand, it sells products. It's usually for profit to the maximum.
Right.
But social enterprise, at least my perception of it going into this conversation, is a little bit more conservative. You don't be too extravagant.
Right.
You try to be to live a very modest life. But to combine these two together, it sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's how it should be run. Otherwise you can't scale at all. Yeah. And how you gonna compete with the for-profits, right? So I think that's important thing to think about. Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, you don't watch movies. You read a very small curated selection of books.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if there has been something you consumed media-wise recently that surprised you.
Surprised me, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a... Oh, no, I don't think...
Okay.
Was it a lead-up question or something?
No.
Like, for you?
Let me think. I think... So, recently on... Do you have Netflix?
Yes.
Okay.
Not my account, actually. It's my...
Okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
So, I won't say something that surprised me, but I went in expecting there was... So, there's this series called Arcane.
Okay.
It is based off a very popular game called League of Legends.
Okay.
And there's a lot of characters inside.
Right.
To summarize it does a very, very good job of... It's animated. But the animation style, I think, from my point of view, it's really top tier because it melts the best of 2D art and the best of 3D art, and you combine it together. And one of the fears about productions like this is because it's a big production. You have a lot of capital money. You have a lot of like investor relations riding on this particular IP to do well. And more often than not, the meddling of the studios would corrupt the actual vision of it.
Right.
But the surprising thing about this particular series called Arcane is that they did... So imagine a gymnast doing the set.
Right.
And towards the end, they stuck the landing. And that's always... It's like a very nice show because...
Right.
More often than not, they would do all these fancy things. Like if it's a gymnast, they do all these fancy things, but they don't stick the landing.
Right.
And if you look it up online, maybe because the studio controlling wanting to do something different, they don't trust the creative enough, or all these different problems. But
right.
for that, they stuck the landing, and it shows because it's such a runaway success.
Right.
Based off a video game property, which many people have said that video games are very difficult to adapt because as a medium, it's a very different medium. to books and to film, and each has its own different properties. Like movies, like you can do editing. And I spoke to like a director before. He said one of the key features of a movie is like time. You can play with it, but for let's say a piece of music, you only have 4 minutes. But you can play with the different layers. Same thing for books.
Right. Oh, that's a different way. Okay, maybe that's one show I'll watch. It's not documentary.
So, if we were to stay away from the media questions, what type of philosophies have you learned or even picked up along the way that you have kind of adopted into your own frame of thinking? Because philosophy, I don't think they teach it in school, at least not when I was in primary, secondary. And it's something that perhaps you read about it or someone told you about it and you were curious enough to go and find, who is this Marcus Aurelius? Who is this Socrates fellow? Then you go and look into it on the internet on your own accord. Or you go and you stumble upon like a secondhand bookstore, you find this book, or maybe you read it. So it's a very happenstance thing as well. So I'm curious to know what phrases or teachings from olden philosophers have you adopted or have you like took into your own outlook of life?
So I'm very, very new to philosophy. I think one of the books I picked up which have impacted a lot of my life was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I read that when I was in the very early stage of building this company.
That's a deep book, man.
It's a deep book, that's a deep book. But not as deep and hardcore as Meditations by, Marcus Aurelius. That's even until now, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I recently get very interested in reading about Stoicism. Reading a lot. I mean, I've heard that term for a long time, but just never had like the energy or the headspace to really go and like understand what it is for. But in the recent like last 1-2 months, I've just been like catching up a lot of that. So that's one of the area of philosophy that I'm reading, but again, super surface level.
What has surprised you? So within this 1 or 2 months of reading and actually looking, because it's funny, like Stoicism is a term being thrown around. A lot of these terms are being thrown around, and people will have a general idea of it until they go beyond the Wikipedia page, until they actually go and look at Marcus Aurelius or Socrates or whatever, and they actually go and look and reflect and ponder and think about, because a lot of times these are written ages ago, and the writing style is also different. It's in the Roman times or whatever. So, what was surprising to you? Like while reading it,
Okay, I read Meditations. Like not done yet. It's a thin book, but like it takes you ages. I say that one of the most surprising thing was, Marcus Aurelius. He's one of the most powerful men in the world at that time when he wrote Meditations, and you could see like he's just like any one of us. He can't wake up. He get pissed off with himself for things that's like so trivial, and it made me realize that we are all the same. You can be the most powerful person in the world, but you have at least we all have the same problem. We're all fighting the same battles in our head, and we're all trying to figure out how to solve these. So, that was very surprising for me, and it's also like it's why I love it so much, because it's not like they're telling you, hey, this is the way, but I think at least for Meditations, it's more like he's discussing with himself, writing the things that he's learned, and we're just like looking at his diary. So
it's interesting to consider that, because perhaps when he wrote those things when he was still alive, he didn't expect it to be published.
Exactly.
It's like a diary of sorts, right?
Right.
But I think right now in 2021, the technology dictates that it's hyper transparent. Everybody is showing the vulnerability, the success, the maybe less of the failures, but it's hyper transparent now.
Right.
What are your thoughts on it? Like in modern day society, not about Stoicism or whatever. What are your thoughts about things being so hyper transparent, or even being like, what's the word for it? Hyper real? Is it hyper real? Yeah. It being so dramatized that it's very difficult to put faith to believe that something is actually something is actually real, because it could be done up for drama. It could be done up for a variety of reasons.
You mean like the content out there right now? I mean, that's
why. Or do you not partake?
I try not to. Okay. I try not to be on social media too much, although like because of the nature of my work I have to. But honestly, man, I'm not a big fan of social media. I sometimes I fall into this hole of like looking at what everyone else is doing and then trying to compare myself, which is very disruptive for me. I gotta admit, like, that's a big problem for me. So I just try to spend as much time as I can not, consuming any content. But then again, I fall back into it. It's like a little dark rabbit hole that, once you see one content and you get in. So I that's just what I'm afraid about. Yeah.
Interesting. Think. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Fuck.
Yeah. What about you? Are you you use a lot of social media?
I use
How's
it to,
your consumption like?
I use it to I use it to just look at what other people are doing from the art side. I don't follow too much about
inspiration.
Definitely, but even that has its own failures because unfortunately you can't create and avoid. But in collecting all these inspirations, you tend to subconsciously produce them when you're doing. But that's the paradox, you always want to do something original,
right?
But inherently nothing is ever original.
Yes,
because you're always looking. And you don't consciously, let's say there's a pattern there or there's this alien here. You're not doing that because you are taking in so many different things. Right. But to be inspired as a creative, naturally you will tend to, let's say if you're a musician, you'll listen to music. As a visual artist, you will look at visuals. Right. So I think that's always the paradox. I put it on the side. Because I think it's also important to look outside of the sphere you're in for inspiration. I think it's always important. Right. But as with everything, moderation. Moderation, yeah. I use Instagram or TikTok? TikTok? I don't use TikTok. I think it's TikTok. The success of TikTok is very interesting to consider because we're born in the 90s. Yeah. And we have experienced the analog and the digital, the cross, and we're on the tail end of seeing the life cycle of the technology. So Facebook, I don't know, Friendster, to Facebook, to I guess Instagram, now Twitter, and now maybe to TikTok. So it's interesting to see like these life cycles or the life cycle of it. Not say that it will die out, but it will lose popularity because a younger generation is picking it up. So it goes to assume that within 3 years, TikTok would subside, then a new one will come up. But it also begs the question, like, because age only goes one way. It doesn't go back. And if you're running a business, I think it's also important to consider how do you stay relevant, quote unquote. I think relevance is a very bad word. It's more like, how do you communicate your ideas to a generation where the divide is getting more and more apart, and attention span getting lesser and lesser. And I think that's always an interesting thought to have. Because all these are still quote unquote new technology. We only know the repercussions of, let's say, someone using TikTok, or not even using quote unquote, but just having it, viewing it casually. We'll only know the repercussions a couple years down the road. I think recently there was a lot of Facebook got a lot of flack because of the way Facebook owns Instagram. And by the nature of Facebook, they have internal reports showing that the algorithm kind of promotes a certain type of picture or certain type of lifestyle to maybe underage children, girls, and it promotes certain negative behaviors. Only recently, because the technology is so new. It's only been 5-6 years, and only recently a report came out. So really? It is ultimately still an experiment. Okay, interesting. It's a scary place. It's only going to get scarier. These things go one way. We're not going to go back to mailing. Email and whatever's next. It's only going to go one way. I think podcast is... Well, how's your thought on podcasts? Come again? What are your thoughts on podcasts as a way to... I just think it's... same as books. Books are one of the first technologies. If you see technology as a way of disseminating information. And a podcast is that. I think there is no inherently good or bad podcast. I think it'll be more... I personally think it'll be more relevant because it is getting to the point where every individual is like their own quote-unquote brand. And by that, they have their own thoughts. hence like people have their own YouTube channels.
Right,
I see some content where it's just them viewing a YouTube video and their reaction. So, but it is kind of funny if you think about it like 20 years or 10 years ago. But this is what people are interested in. They're interested in the personality, however real or however fake it is.
Right.
So in thinking about that train of thought, so yeah, I think having the technology to speak your own thoughts and whatever, I think it's going to be very natural.
Yeah.
Like
segueing,
I saw the vlogs you did.
Oh yeah, 100 vlogs. Yes. That was actually one of the. Every year I have this do one thing that scares you. That was actually one of them.
Was it a suggestion by someone, or you just thought about it?
No. So one of the things that I wanted to be good at was like I want to learn confidence. Confidence is a skill. It's a skill.
Okay. I think it's a muscle. I don't think it's a skill.
Okay, yes. Now that you say confidence is a muscle. Okay.
Yeah.
The good thing is it can be trained, right? You know, and that was one of the things that I wanted to. I won't say like, I don't have confidence right now, but I want to have much more confident about, at least also behind the camera, because of the nature of the work I do. I get a lot of, like features on magazines and stuff like that, and I used to hate that a lot. I used to avoid that, but so I thought, the best way to do it is just like to just do it. It's just like take a camera and go on and film yourself. Plus, I wanted to be good at storytelling. I want to learn how to edit videos, and I just decided 100 videos in 100 days.
So on paper, theoretically, it sounds like a good thing to do.
Yes.
So how did the actual experience go?
Oh man, like I had to carry a camera the whole day around, and there are days where you just have nothing to say, and the editing process was a chore. Like
definitely.
Yeah, I had days where I'm like tired because I'm a very early sleeper. I'm in bed by 9:30.
Oh God, I found another one. Wow,
really?
I've heard of people doing that.
Okay.
I've met one before, and good to know you're another one.
Yeah, I'm an early sleeper.
Okay.
And when I was on the 100 days, I slept at like close to 12 every day, and that just messes my whole life. Yeah. And then like just pissed off myself. There were days where I just fell asleep and I woke up and continued to edit again. So I'm glad that project is done. But I'm going back to vlogging. Yeah, I'm just trying to find the angle, because the 100 days was more like I'm just gonna film anything and everything.
Yep.
And it allowed me to figure out like what to what's the direction, what's the story, how do I want to present myself, and in December I'm gonna relaunch it again. Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself throughout that 100 days?
One of the biggest thing was try not to be perfect. In everything I do, I'm not sure in the whole creative space is this a thing, but I feel like, they always say perfect is the enemy of the good or something like that.
Perfect is the enemy of done.
Yeah, something like that. And at work, there's always I want to make the picture clearer, the colors nicer and stuff. And in the end, I just get nothing published. And the 100 days really forces you to just push the button and just let it out, and focus on getting things done rather than doing it perfectly. Again, it depends on the context of work you're trying to do. Sometimes it's better to make sure that it's perfect, like you're taking your exams.
Yep.
But for at least the work I do, I think one of my biggest problem is like getting things done. Like there's a lot of different projects, ideas that I have, but I just spend way too much time over analyzing, thinking. So that project really allowed me to focus on being imperfect, but like really getting it done. If you watch some of the videos, there are some times where I just like half of the video it got cut out. And yeah, I was like, screw it, I'm too tired, I'm just gonna upload it. Yeah, cut out, no sound. And yeah, even on camera, like the first video, I'm gonna make sure my hair's right, and like my shirt's cool. But after that, I'm just like singlet all the way.
Yeah, I saw a
like
couple.
Screw it, man.
I think I saw like day 1 and I skipped to like day 90 onwards.
It's like singlet and just like a cap on. I was like, screw this shit, man. Yeah, so
But did it help you in achieving that idea of confidence you were looking at?
Oh, for sure, 100%. One of the big things I realized was at the very beginning or while filming the project, I would not be able to look at a camera and have a full sentence without having filler words like or. And it's a chore to get them edited because I got to cut, you know. But when I reached to the end, I realized that I could just speak a full sentence. Like my train of thoughts are just much better. I can better articulate what I want to say. And you know, just have a better flow of conversation. Even now doing this podcast, I don't think I would have been able to have such a long conversation without having the or much. And you know, just really getting the whole hang of it and just more confident in being like recorded, being on camera, and you know, like, which is much more helpful in a lot of things like today. Yeah, it's much more natural. Yeah. So it's a great skill, like I would say. Yeah.
It's more like an intangible skill that people often overlook. Yes. Because there's very little ways to measure it. Yes. I mean, let's say if it's like mathematics or physics, you can obviously put it through a test, a standardized test. But I think skills such as even going down to like leadership, how you talk, how you present yourself. Yes, you can go for a course and all that. You can learn theoretically. Right. But I think ultimately it's up to the individual to kind of process that and to embody that. I think the word is embodiment because you can know, okay, you should always speak, look at someone and stuff like that. But I think when you are of a certain personality type, you tend to have different habits or different patterns that until you find your way to be quote unquote extroverted for certain scenarios, it will never work.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And also one of the things that I felt like I learned a lot about myself is also what I want to say, I think I lost my train of thought. Now it's my turn.
Yeah, it's a virus.
I learned a lot about myself. Of not worrying. Actually, this was one of the biggest things why I started was I was always, and it's something I've struggled with since I was young. One of my biggest weakness was worrying about what other people thought about me. That's why I was always anxious in my life. That's why I wanted to, you know, go to Everest and stuff. And even until today, it's something I've been working on. Obviously, not much better at it.
But it's at the back of your head.
It's the back of my head, right? I think everyone to a certain extent feel like that.
That's the human condition.
Yeah, that's a human. Yeah. And I felt like doing that project, the 100 days project, really it's one an act where I can really force myself to, like, I don't care what everyone's thinking, because you're putting yourself out there shamelessly, you know, talking about your views and your thoughts and putting your face up there and stuff. So that again, that was probably one of the biggest piece, like, takeaway, and also why I started the project.
But even powering through, because I think it is natural and valid to feel this when you are self-conscious or whatever. But it's also interesting to know that this project is done by you, and you're accountable to yourself. You can always get to like day like 40 and you're like, okay, today I tired. Then you can just, it's always like that, but you were accountable to yourself. You did everything.
Yeah, and you know, like, I feel like if I put a word out, like, I'm going to do it every day, then like I gotta make sure I finish it, otherwise everyone's watching, you know. And that's why I wanna put it out there rather than I could just film and not publish it, you know. So that for me was important, to make sure that people like held me accountable for it. Yeah.
I think as we wind on the conversation, I'm curious to know the mantra that you had about doing something that scares you. You want to do something that scares you like every year. Did you get it from somewhere? Do you remember?
Yeah, so it started when on, I think, 2016. So I was sitting around with my friend having a beer, and I just told him like, oh, I want to start eating right, I want to sleep early, and all that kind of stuff. And on Christmas that day, he gave me a book, and on the front cover of the book, he wrote like, instead of doing all these New Year resolutions, I challenge you to do one thing that scares you next year. And I still have that book, and it's just one mantra that I live by. Yeah, and I tell these stories wherever people I go. It's like that one book, that one quote. And my friend even told me like, man, like, I inspired myself, you know.
But it's interesting to look back and to ponder the happenstance of him even writing that, because that is additional work that he might not have needed to go through. He could have written something different.
Right. And
the whole path that you might have went on, it could be different.
And you know, he probably didn't talk too much about it. You know, it's just like, hey, just do something that scares you, man. Stop whining. You know,
maybe it's a response to you, but
I don't know, man. But that's just one mantra I live by. Yeah.
Okay, so the last question I have is, what does success look like to you in 2021 today?
Success look like to me is for me, I think it's about doing something that I'm afraid of and actually doing it, and not get worried about what other people think, and also in the process, hopefully I get to discover, while doing the things I'm afraid of, get to discover a little bit of my strength, and then use that to create some positive impact in the world around me. Yeah.
That's a brilliant way to end this podcast. Is there anything else you would like to talk about before we end?
No, I mean, check out booksbeyondborders.org. I'm going to do a little bit of self-promote. We collect
where can
books.
people find you? Where's the shop?
So we are at 41 Jalan Pemimpin. We are open on Friday, Saturday, Sundays. We don't take walk-ins. People can only RSVP. On Instagram, we are booksbeyond.borders. On our website, where we have all the information, my story, where we are based at, booksbeyondborders.org. And if anyone want to connect, I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, one last thing. You introduced a very interesting function on the website where people can buy everything and ship it out later or something like that.
Yeah.
Why?
So, you've been to, I'm sure you've been to an e-commerce store and you just the free shipping is like $50 and you only can find like $40. And it's such a waste. In terms of the customer experience, man, I just need $10 more and stuff. And everything we do at Books Beyond Borders, we focus on what's the most value. How can we bring the most value to our customers? Be it the quality of our books, the service. And I think that, we shouldn't force people to buy books that they don't want just to hit the free shipping. So we allow people with a function to buy, because we upload books every single day on our website. So you refresh the page tomorrow, you see new books. We allow them to keep buying until they hit the minimum purchase amount, and then they get to ship it out for free. So shipping will always be free if they're not urgently having the book. And I would say 80% of people use that right now.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Randall. Thank you for your time. This has been a fantastic and pleasant conversation.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, man.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode and feel inspired. If you enjoyed what you heard thus far, do give us a follow on Instagram. And don't forget to share and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next episode.